Hi, everyone. No theme song with the Friday reading, so we kind of have to just get right into it. Um, let's see. We put our logo up there. Okay, we're back. How's everyone doing? I hope you're all doing well. I just wanted to remind everybody. I'm JP. Julie, I'm reading today because I'm reading a piece that I wrote, published this morning on Substack. So Julie graciously let me take the microphone and do the reading today. So it's exciting to be here. I'm happy to be here. And today is St. Nicholas's feast day. And so that's part of the reason that I wanted to read it today and also launch the piece that I'm going to read today. I need to do some business here and launch on Rockfin. Hello, Rockfin. And hello to all our viewers on Rockfin. We're also streaming on Rumble and YouTube and Facebook. By the way, only a few more readings on Facebook because we're going to be pulling all our content from Facebook. We're going to pull our account. We've talked about this and why we're doing it because they're changing things at the beginning of the year, which is unfavorable to people in general, but content creators in particular. So if you don't want to be part of the evil empire known as what are they called now? What is Facebook called now? Anyway, it's JP, so no tech issues today. I see. No, just memory issues. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the reading with a publication called Saints Preserve Us, and it's came out in 1993, and it's a compendium of like all the Catholic saints, I guess saints in general. Book of Hours is live on Rumble. Good. Okay, cool. Thank you, Julie. And I think we're live on Rockfin as well. Let me double check that. And yep. Okay. Yeah, we're there. Cool. All right, so this is the entry for Saint Nicholas, and like I said, the 6th of December is his feast day. He was the patron saint of bakers, barrel makers, boot blacks, which are shoe shine guys, girls, guys and gals, boot blacks, brewers, brides, children, dock workers, fishermen, Greece, the country of Greece, merchants, pawnbrokers, perfumers, prisoners, the country of Russia, so it's patron saint of those two countries, sailors, spinsters, and travelers. Okay, so we know him best. Oh, and by the way, the authors of this book, Sean Kelly and Rosemary Rogers, and it's, you can probably get it out there on the used book market. Came out in 1993, Saints Preserve Us. We know him best by his Dutch name, Santa Claus. This saint, so long and universally beloved by Christians and of the East and the West. He was a bishop of Myra, a city in southwest Turkey, who may or may not have attended the Council of Nicaea in 325. And by the way, 325, that's around the time that actually Christmas was established. I don't have the exact date. It's in the document that I'll be reading, or the piece that I'm reading later today, or later in the broadcast. But he wasn't associated with Christmas right away. So as we'll find out, he may or may not have attended the Council of Nicaea in 325. If he did, it was after being martyred in the Diocletian, I almost said diocese, so Diocletian persecution of 305. But then Nicholas was a wonder worker. He was a singularly holy child. On fast days and Fridays, he would refuse his mother's breast. It's a funny thing about the saints. They always have these like magical stories. Let's see. He would refuse his mother's breast. After his wealthy parents died of plague, He set about doing good deeds. 3 young women he knew were about to enter lives of prostitution. Um, for their poor father had no money to provide them with dowries. Secretly by night, Nicholas threw 3 bags of gold into their window. The 3 balls, representing financial aid in times of need, became the emblem of the pawnbrokers guild. In time of famine, I'm not going to comment on that one. In time of famine, Nicholas provided the poor with miraculous bread, hence his patronage of bakers. During that same famine, our saint, by now a bishop, visited a local butcher and was served to his surprise meat. Suspecting the worst, Nicholas proceeded to the host's cellar, there to find 3 barrels containing 3 murdered boys in brine. Rest assured, the bishop lost no time in restoring them to life, and he has been a patron of children in a pickle ever since. Since his death, he has often appeared to sailors to guide their storm-tossed vessels, and to those unjustly imprisoned to effect their release. When the city of Myra, in which he was enshrined, fell to the Muslims, such Italian cities as Venice and Bari contested possession of his holy relics, for they were the objects of pilgrimage. The lucrative tourist industry of the Middle Ages. Oh, yeah, basically. So during the Middle Ages, pilgrims that would travel the Christian lands and visit what they call relics, which were basically bones of saints, and they different churches and uh, uh, monasteries, etc., would house these relics and basically make money from tourists who would travel around from place to place. These pilgrims. And so yeah, so Venice and so the Italians wanted to get those hold of those bones because there was money in that. It's always about money, isn't it? In 1087, enterprising sailors from Bari outright stole the saint's bones, which to this day rest in San Nicola Basilica, a sweet smiling myrrh-like substance that oozes from the tomb accounts for Nicholas's patronage of perfumers. Okay. So yeah, really creepy stuff that happens in the historical records of the Catholic Church. But anyway, so that's Saint Nicholas, and I wanted to um, let's see. I wanted to share an image that Julie showed me. Um, let's see. So the guy on the left is the guy we'll be talking about, and the guy on the right is the guy that I just read about. So Saint Nicholas, these 2 guys, even though they're both called Saint Nicholas, are not the same person or persona. The guy on the right is a bishop, and he's the one I was just reading to you. He's from Turkey. And the guy on the left, well, he's only been around for about 200 years. Okay, we're going to get rid of that. And we're going to I'm going to share with you the document. I've been spending the whole morning in the corporate world. It's a piece that I wrote. Let's see here. Okay, there we go. So it's called Reinventing Christmas. And well, let's just get into it. I'm going to hide myself on the screen so you can see it better. Hi. So there hasn't been any audio apparently. Can you hear me now?
No. In fact, the Substack is still on. So there you go. Now bring yourself back into the.
I did. Yeah, I'm here. Okay.
Okay. Right. So.
Okay. All right. So I'm sorry. Once again, we've run into some technical issues. Okay. So let me try this again.
Make sure that your camera is on. Now
Okay.
you're off screen again. I'm not your. So.
Okay. Can you see me?
Make sure that your microphone is on the correct microphone.
Right? Yeah, it is. So can you hear me?
There you go.
I don't know what's going on because all the settings were set up properly. So sorry, folks. I took my screen, I took myself off the screen so that you could see the text better. But I'll leave myself up while I read this. So, okay. Okay. All right. Let's start over. So this piece, and I don't know if you were able to see the image of Saint Nicholas's. Okay. Everybody saw that part. Okay. So let's get into the document.
Yeah. So this is perfect. You're on the side there.
Okay.
And then we can see the Substack.
I'm getting coached by Julie on the side, so she can see what I cannot. Okay. She's seeing what you're seeing. Okay. All right. Let's take this again. This is called Reinventing Christmas. This essay was adapted from the Book of Hours video script, The New Model, Resetting Christmas, and is based on the book, The Battle for Christmas, A Cultural History of America's Most Cherished Holiday by Stephen Nissenbaum. It was written around the same time that this book, Saints Preserve Us, around 1993-94, so during the cultural wars of the 90s. So let's get into it. Oh, by the way, so it was adapted from our video script, The New Model, Resetting Christmas. We have two versions, this one and then one that came out a year later. You can watch both of them. You can find them on YouTube. And both that script and the piece that I'm going to read from you, or for you, is based on the book, The Battle for Christmas. It's beginning to feel a lot like, although it may be hard to believe, the way we celebrate Christmas is a little less than 200 years old. In many people's minds, Christmas is as ancient as time itself, and the way we celebrate it is just as old. This is the furthest thing from the truth, and our holiday celebrations are really an invention of tradition. At the dawn of the first industrial revolution, in the early part of the 19th century, the United States was undergoing a huge transformation. The Jeffersonian Revolution in 1800 changed the direction of democracy, its politics, and public policy. Northeastern cities were industrializing and urbanizing the rural areas just outside of previous city limits. The political and social changes that were taking place were bringing about a clash of traditions and a mixing of the classes that the upper classes were not happy about. In an attempt to change behavior and separate the American aristocracy, the 1% of the 19th century, from the rest of the plebeian public, three men, through 4 publications, created a new tradition designed to appear as an old one, which changed the way we have celebrated Christmas for the last 200 years. We're now at the point where the entire world celebrates Christmas, whether the people celebrating the holiday are Western or Christian or not. At the same time, the whole world is going through a gigantic transformation in every part of our lives. At this time, when people need most to come together, we are being kept apart through divisions that are imposed on us by new forms of behavior modification via online influencers, propaganda, misdirection, and lies of omission from media and from the state. But before we immerse ourselves in the sentimental Hallmark Christmas movie security blanket of days gone by, or even the comfort of overly saturated, media driven, cranked up volume spectacle of the current state of holiday celebrations, we we try to find new ways of coping with the hyper-real experience of modern life, we need to look to the past, the long past, because as the cliche goes, you don't know where you're going unless you know where you've been. Now, bring us a figgy pudding. Before the introduction of Santa Claus, holiday gifts, holiday gift guides, or even the Christmas tree, the season of Christmas in America and Europe was a much different experience than it is today. It's important to point out that by the time of the American Revolution, pious and devout Christians of all types, not just Catholics, celebrated Christmas, but only in church. And unless it fell on a Sunday, December 25th was still considered an ordinary working day. But for others, December was the end of the harvest, a time of leisure for farmers and farmhands, before the deep freeze of winter and a time after the work was done. This was a time of the bounty of harvest, of newly fermented beer or wine, and a time when fresh meat from freshly slaughtered animals was available and had to be consumed before it spoiled. The season of Christmas was not a one-day celebration. It was the winter holiday season, a time of rebelliousness, public drunkenness, excessive eating, aggressive begging, the mocking of authority figures, and home invasions of wealthy households by lower classes. This was a season of misrule and wassailing, of mumming and Christmas carols. And I think the most contemporary example of this, if you've ever seen or experienced something called SantaCon, which takes place in cities in America. I don't even know if they're still doing it anymore because of, the C word. But back then it was, and we have examples of SantaCon in our video to illustrate, the idea of what we're talking about. But that's the most contemporary example of what we're describing here. So, these traditions kind of like are embedded in us, I think, and they haven't really gone away. Misrule meant behavior regarded by the genteel and religious as that of drunkenness, rioting, cross-dressing, fornication, and recklessness. But this was the end of the season and a time of blowing off steam, when the poor claimed the right to march into the houses of the wealthy landowners, often their employers, enter their halls, and receive gifts of food, drink, and sometimes money. This season was a societal pressure release valve that kept class resentments in check. So at this time of year, the lords of the manors would open their homes to the peasants, servants, and apprentices and feasted them. And in return, the lower classes offered their goodwill, or in modern terms, a verbal agreement that they would continue to work in the fields obediently the rest of the year. The gifts given were in the form of food and drink that were consumed in the presence of the giver. These were gifts given from the wealthy to the poor, from employer to employee. In later times, in a similar lord to servant gesture, money was put into a Christmas box for paper carriers or coffeehouse employees. But in this case, the transaction was consumer to service provider. We can see that tradition extended to contemporary times in the form of end-of-the-year tips to letter carriers and others we see all year long as a form of thank you for service well done, and of course, goodwill. But by the early 19th century, the gentry, the aristocrats, and the upper classes who, in generations before, tolerated misrule were no longer willing to keep the lower classes in their place through this safety valve. The rituals that worked for centuries before in agrarian societies of Europe and England and America did not fit into newly formed democracies and industrialized urban cities, especially in northeastern American cities where Puritan and Protestant non-ritualistic roots. So if you go back, the Puritans, in fact, outlawed Christmas and considered it a papist holiday and something that they wanted to reject. And so the tradition of Christmas in especially the northeastern American cities and areas, counties, what have you, that had Puritan roots, rejected Christmas outright. And it wasn't, like I said earlier, it wasn't until the middle of the 18th century, the 1700s, that all Christians more or less started celebrating Christmas by going to church. The old culture and customs of public misrule and role reversal at the end of the year were now at odds with the practicality of the new urban environment and genteel society of that time. The social contract between lower and upper classes had come to an end. No longer was there an oath of goodwill in exchange for feasting at the end of a long agrarian season. Class, social, and economic differences were forming at the dawn of the first industrial revolution. It was this clash of classes and traditions in which the idea to create new holidays, practices, and traditions was formed, traditions that conformed to this new urban industrial age. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and I'll take a drink of water. The St. Nicholas who became Santa Claus is a complete fabrication. He started life in New York City. In fact, the origin of the way we celebrate Christmas today is rooted in New York City by a group of wealthy civic leaders who all knew each other through the New York Historical Society. They were nicknamed the Knickerbockers. These were men who all belonged to a distinct social set, the old aristocracy of the city. They picked up their name from a satirical allegorical book, Diedrich Knickerbocker's History of New York, by Washington Irving. And Washington Irving was one of these dudes. Irving, along with John Pintard and Clement Clark Moore and others within their circle were politically conservative and reactionary and considered democracy to be nothing more than mob rule. However, real mob rule was beginning to take place in the form of roaming gangs of young street thugs and members of the emerging urban proletariat. These bands of revelers were no longer staying within the confines of working-class neighborhoods. They began to venture out across the city and into the city's wealthy neighborhoods, especially on New Year's Eve, making as much noise as possible in the form of what were known as Calathumpian bands. These groups and bands used drums, tin kettles, rattles, horns, whistles, and a variety of other instruments to wake the slumbering upper-class neighborhoods, in some cases remaining outside specific houses to deliberately disturb the wealthy occupants within. Maybe somebody who works for an insurance company or something, I don't know. In the light of these annual disruptions and the general political social change that was taking place, the Knickerbockers were attempting to find a way to end what they thought of as immoral behavior and create new ways of public expression. But it wasn't as self-conscious as all that. Well, it was, but like all social change, the attempts made came in fits and starts. Starting with the Knickerbockers' History of New York, various attempts at public holiday celebrations were made, but didn't gain any traction until the publishing of the poem A Visit from St. Nicholas. Although Washington Irving supplied the background and character sketches for the modern Christmas, it was John Pintard who provided the structure to build around and give the holiday shape. His first endeavors, however, were not New Year's Eve events or New Year's events, nor were they Christmas events. Instead, Pintard gave us an event that took place on the feast day of a saint, December 6th, a saint that he would introduce through a broadsheet published in 1810, which proposed this saint to be the new patron saint of old New York, and that saint was St. Nicholas. It's said that if John Pintard introduced St. Nicholas, it was Washington Irving who popularized him. Washington Irving is probably best known for his stories, The Ghost of Sleepy Hollow and Rip Van Winkle. But before John Pintard introduced St. Nicholas to New York and subsequently the world, Washington Irving would provide the description, background, and mannerisms to the new St. Nick, later to become known as Santa Claus. Irving provided enough background about St. Nicholas for others to later fill in and more. Let's see, for others to later fill in more and add to the character who eventually became the personification of Christmas. In 2 different books, The Sketch of Geoffrey Crayon Gent, or Gentleman, and Bracebridge Hall, or The Humorous, a medley in which he employed a medley as part of the title, in which he employed the narrator Geoffrey Crayon. Irving offered up several stories about Christmas traditions that never really existed. At least they were described in the stories, but instead offered an invention of tradition. It was those fabricated traditions that people latched onto and allowed Irving, Pintard, and Moore and others to create the Christmas in the original new old-fashioned way. If John Pintard introduced St. Nicholas and Washington Irving popularized him, it was Clement Moore who gave us the character we know today as Santa Claus. But he didn't create Santa from just John Pintard's and Irving's work. There were also a number of earlier poems published between 1809 and 1823 by anonymous contributors, one of which gave St. Nick his sleigh and reindeer, which most likely gave Moore the material to create his poem that caught the public's attention and gave us the template for the big man himself, the embodiment of Christmas, Santa Claus. Must be Santa. The character who first appeared in Clement Clark Moore's 1823 poem, A Visit from St. Nicholas, you know the one, "'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse," was the first manifestation of the character we now know as Santa Claus. This St. Nicholas is nothing like the historical St. Nicholas, who is the patron saint of Greece and Russia and is celebrated in the Netherlands. That St. Nicholas was a bishop from the southwest region of Turkey, who is the patron saint of children, brides, bootblacks, barrel makers, and a plethora of other tradespeople, as I read to you before. But the Dutch Santa Claus, whose feast day is December 6th, is not the same character as the American Santa Claus. Although the traditional St. Nicholas may have been the inspiration for John Pintard and the Knickerbockers, who were looking to the old Dutch culture of New Amsterdam as a guide to influencing the contemporaneous culture in New York, there is no evidence that the Dutch St. Nicholas traveled with the Dutch settlers and traders of the 17th century to New Amsterdam, only to reemerge later in the early 19th century of New York. The Santa Claus we know was created self-consciously by a number of contributors, and it was that origin of this character that gives Santa Claus his ancient folkloric authenticity. But it was Santa's activities, delivering presents to children around the world and wishing everyone a Merry Christmas, that gave him the sheen of newness and joy, which made him the perfect capitalist vessel and the perfect spokesman ever. And let me back up a little bit to what I was reading in the Saints Preserve Us book. St. Nicholas, the saint, the historical saint that we were talking about earlier, was also known for doing good deeds. Like I read, he threw the gold pieces into the girls' houses through their window. He saved the children. He, did some other things, I think, for the bakers. And he guides, sailors lost at sea, whatever. So I think that those characteristics did transfer over when, like John Pintard and some of these other people, when they were creating St. Nicholas as the patron saint of New York, they probably took that historical record from the Dutch and applied it to this persona. But clearly, in their descriptions, he was a jolly old saint. He looked like an elf. And in the book that I, drew from, the information from for this piece, he was described, his early descriptions were of more of a working class type of person. He was a tinker, and he smoked a short pipe, and as opposed to a long pipe of the gentry. So over the years, he's changed, but the initial emergence of Santa Claus was completely different, except for those characteristics of being kind and giving presents and helping people carried over. Okay, childhood as a thing. One of the biggest changes that took place in society with the reinvention of Christmas was the reinvention of childhood. To be fair, society was naturally moving toward recognizing children as more than just small people or servants that were relatives. But those changes were coming slowly over time, and it took the reinvention of Christmas and its emphasis on family gatherings inside the home that kickstarted the transformation. But it wasn't just children that were being transformed, it was the family unit as well. The domestication of Christmas was the cause and effect of the domestication of childhood, which in turn recreated the family. Before the reinvention of Christmas, the family was merely a means of creating workers who could help keep the family operating and keep the family name going. In other words, you had small servants in the house. But now the family was a unit that was about children and their happiness. Childhood was now a thing, and it was now referred to as a time for children to be children, a time to have fun, be happy, and learn how to be adults. And the instrument used to encourage these transformations of the family unit and childhood itself is as much a symbol of Christmas as Santa Claus himself, the Christmas tree. Oh, Christmas tree. More than Santa Claus or exchanging gifts or Christmas itself, the Christmas tree is thought to be as ancient as the ancient symbol for the winter holiday celebration, but it's not. It, more than any other contemporary symbol of the season, has single-handedly and physically replaced other truly ancient symbols of the past. The Yule log, wassailing, caroling, now only exist as concepts in people's minds, or they are watered-down customs that are not practiced in their original form. The Christmas tree is the reason we exchange gifts with one another. As I pointed out, gifts were given in the past, but they were given from the Lord to the servant, from high to low. The Christmas tree was the medium for equal exchange from one to another, but also from parent to child. But not because the child is a servant, but because the child is a child. In reality, the Christmas tree is not ancient at all. It wasn't adopted into mainstream American culture until the 1830s. It came from Germany, but it didn't come from German immigrants. And it wasn't adopted into mainstream German culture until around the same time. The St. Nicholas, the Christmas tree, like St. Nicholas, the Christmas tree was introduced as if it was ancient and authentic folklore tradition. It originated in the last third of the 18th century and was a local custom in Strasbourg, Germany. And the spread of the tradition throughout Germany can be attributed to the author Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. At the same time, the tree had wax candles attached to it. They were lit for a short time and only revealed a specific moment on the Christmas Eve. Gifts were tied to the branches of the tree, and the whole spectacle was hidden from the children of the house until that special time when the children were brought into the room to take in that special, magical moment. An American visiting Germany wrote letters to his father, a Unitarian minister, about the Christmas tree ritual, with its focus on children and the family. The tree, with its magical reveal, fit an agenda of promoting the new concept of family and was at the crux of differences in child rearing being promoted at the time. Like the story of St. Nick, promoted by the Knickerbockers, the Christmas tree was related to an agenda and an effort to change society through the way children were raised and how they were taught. New methods of education were being developed by members of the Unitarian Church in Boston. And we can look to the Unitarians for the widespread adoption of the Christmas tree, which coincided with the new Christmas rituals that developed in New York. This image is taken from one of my Christmas trees in the past. Even though we can attribute the adoption of the Christmas tree through efforts and agendas of cultural reformers in the Unitarian Church, we can also see that their concepts of family and children took place simultaneously with what was happening in New York and other cities in the US. The Christmas tree fit in with the cult of Santa Claus, the new commercial opportunities that arose through gift giving, and the transformation of children, childhood, and the family. The new old-fashioned way. Despite our belief that the way we celebrate Christmas is ancient and has been going on for many centuries, it has really only been celebrated this way for the past 200 years or so. Christmas before the 19th century was celebrated in ways that are much different than today. Before the mid-18th century in North America and Europe, Christmas was a Catholic holiday not celebrated by Protestants, and secular celebrations of misrule and wassailing were focused on the ancient winter rituals, holiday rituals that came from so-called pagan traditions. And quite honestly, the church in Rome began formally celebrating Christmas on December 25th in 336 CE. That's AD, for those of you not paying attention, but yeah, they changed that. So although no one really knows when Jesus was born, that date was probably chosen to co-opt existing pagan holidays like the Roman holiday Saturnalia, which took place between the 17th and 25th of December. And in fact, if you read up I think it was Constantine, the emperor, the Roman emperor. He was a Christian, and this was kind of a political move on his part to get the church to, adopt this day, which was the final day of Saturnalia, which was, the old Roman religion, right? And also, just want to also point out that some of the rituals that were in Saturnalia, like swapping roles, like the servants would become lords and the lords would become servants. Those are some of the traditions that passed on into the misrule and other winter holiday rituals that we're talking about, and they can be pointed back to Saturnalia and probably earlier than that. So from the beginning, Christmas was used to change behavior, or at least circumvent the more organic pre-Christian holidays and celebrations. And the Christmas that a lot of people have been striving for since the culture wars of the 1990s, the one that is less secular and materialistic and keeps Christ in Christmas, never really existed, at least not in a contemporary context. Complaints about Christmas being too commercial and materialistic go as far back as the 1830s, not long after the adoption of the new Christmas. Something else that has continued from that period on is the idea that handmade gifts are more authentic. And this is something that developed at the time of the new Christmas. And there's really no evidence saying that's the case, because Christmas gifts were created in the new factories as products for people to buy, and it led to the consumer society that we live in today. And so the idea of people making their gifts and giving them to other people was just kind of a myth and an idea that people kind of came up with because there were lots of things that people gave to each other, including like almanacs and books and cheaply manufactured toys that broke. And we're talking about the 1830s. So it's a long time ago. Oh, by the way, this is a display of gingerbread houses in Pittsburgh. So before the introduction of Santa Claus and the Christmas tree, people went to church on December 25th and then went to work. It's only since the industrial, consumer-focused Christmas that emerged from the mid-19th century that this holiday became what we experience today. The change in how people celebrate in the winter holidays was intentional in order to transform behavior from raucous roaming throughout the city, town, or countryside to a quiet family celebration by moving the celebration from out of doors to in. And Christmas was used to do it. It's important to point out that the development of the Christmas holiday season that we celebrate today was not created overnight, but over a period of 10 to 20 years. John Pintard originally focused on December 6th, St. Nicholas Day, in order to promote the saint as a symbol and the patron saint of New York. But he changed his focus to January 1st, New Year's Day, and then ultimately to December 25th, Christmas Day. I also want to emphasize that throughout that time, the promoters of Christmas, St. Nicholas and the Christmas tree, were interested in changing social behavior by taking Christmas out of the street and putting it into the home, recreating childhood and redefining the family unit. And so this reinvention was intended for completely different reasons than lifting up a religious holiday. That date and its significance in the Christian calendar was used to eradicate the practices of misrule, wassailing, and what was seen as idleness and debauchery. But it's likely that these rituals from the rural past would likely fade away or morph into something else anyway, because the Industrial Revolution was having a big effect on the culture and society. Workers were moving out of the fields from the countryside and into factories in the cities. However, it was the introduction of a coal-driven industry that made the biggest difference in the urban population and how they spent their time. That's because before coal, manufacturing mills were driven by rivers and streams which froze up during the winter, which produced the same period of leisure time for mill workers that farm workers had during the winter. With factories working all year round, a growing urban environment that was absorbing the rural lands around it and taking the workers from the fields for factory labor, there was no place for the old ways that acted as a relief valve for class disparity. Those were addressed in other ways later in the century. But for that early part of the 19th century, the newly invented traditions were introduced to the population, gave the bourgeoisie the feeling of at least changing behavior to something they could control. But despite the cultural changes introduced by the Knickerbockers and the progressive wing of the Unitarian Church, the world was already changing. The alignment of behavioral, cultural, civic, and technological change that came together around the same time created the perfect environment for the emerging consumer culture of the mid-19th century to take hold and turn the winter holidays into the Christmas we celebrate today. The Ghost of Christmas Future. We are now undergoing another huge transformation and experiencing a new behavioral change campaign. We're told that we're now more divided than ever. We're being manipulated, misdirected, surveilled, pushed into debt peonage, and lied to by media and the state. It's now time to make positive changes for ourselves and our society as a result of this intentional manipulation of our lives. As a popular Christmas song says, it's the most wonderful time of the year. So maybe we need to leave behind the empty gift giving that has come about through the last 200 years of holiday-driven consumerism and go back to the more social interactions of the past. But in order to do this, we have to stop believing the lies that the ruling class, the politicians, celebrities, marketers, influencers are telling us. This is the same class of people who conned us for generations into the compulsory gift giving, overconsumption, and Christmas time deficit spending. If we're to regain our humanity, it's time to get outside with large groups of people and make some noise. We need to rethink and reinvent our traditions, our rituals and practices to something more organic and human. To do that, we need to be social again and possibly look back to the way we lived and celebrated before the reinvention of Christmas and the winter holidays. And who knows, maybe we won't go back to the days of misrule or wassailing, but whatever we call it, we have to go back to demanding our share and claim our right to march into the houses of the ruling class, enter their halls, and receive the food, drink, and the gifts that we deserve. Or maybe we just turn our backs on the ruling class altogether and make our own fun. But most importantly, we need to take back our lives. There's no greater gift. Okay, that's the piece that I've been reading to you, The Reinvention of Christmas. Something as I was reading that last bit, the future of the Christmas, the ghost of Christmas future. I was thinking about what we were talking about, like a different tradition of getting outside and making lots of noise. And now that we're living on the Gulf Coast, where the holiday of Mardi Gras, somebody just mentioned that. Oh, it's Julie. The holiday of the Mardi Gras is like basically fits that bill. The people around here I think they love Mardi Gras more than they love Christmas. We were at a department store the other day, and there was already a Mardi Gras display because people keep their Christmas trees up. They just change out the decorations to Mardi Gras decorations, and they change the colors from green and red to purple, green, and gold. And Mardi Gras is it's one day, but it's the culmination of the carnival season. And the carnival season is all about getting together, drinking and making noise and being with people. And the parades during carnival are about getting together, drinking and making noise and throwing shit. Because if you go to these parades, they'll have these floats that go by, and they'll throw beads and they'll throw toys and they'll throw all kinds of stuff out there. There's mumming and thumping and Calithumpian bands. Yes. Yeah, there's the second line bands, and they're brass bands, and they're a lot of fun in the parade. So you can go marching with the second line. A lot of times these celebrations are just that. They're not an official parade. So I think that, that's a good template for what we might see as a way of celebrating the Christmas winter holidays, whatever you want to call them in the future. But I think ultimately, though, going back to the thought about, what's been going on since the 1990s and the culture wars and the arguments over, keeping Christ in Christmas and all that. That's fine. Keep Christ in Christmas if you want to, but let's not forget the fact, that this is a made up date. This is a time that was assigned Christ's birthday. And whether you believe or not, that's up to you. And how you celebrate, well, that's up to you as well. And so I think we all need to just kind of look at how we prefer to celebrate these holidays and celebrate them the way we want to, and not worry about how other people are doing it. So that's pretty much it for what I have to say. I want to remind everyone, we will not be on Facebook after the 1st of 2025. And that's because Facebook are changing their rules and their ways of engaging with the public. So just want to give you that warning. We're going to be doing another couple more readings probably before the end of the year. And we might even fit in a bookmark. So that would be fun if we can. Look for that. Look for the readings. And with that, I will say happy St. Nicholas Day. And if I don't see you before then, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. All right. And I'm going to end the stream now. Thanks. Bye-bye.